Yes, Chattanooga City Council yesterday stood by the form-based coding scheme that has been in operation for a couple of years. It denied or did not get support for a motion to approve a plan by the Tennessee Valley Federal Credit Union to put a branch downtown as it was moving out of its current Market Street location. And the Tennessee Valley, the credit union seems to have just ignored the whole form-based coding scheme and proposed something not at all in keeping with several major provisions of that system. And also, the city council passed a plan for the regulation of food trucks. It raised its foot so that food truck operators might kiss it appropriately and have a wider scope of business here. David Toulis, Nuga Radio, loving your neighbor and urging you to buy local. 800-8949 is the number. 800-8949. I'm a maverick journalist and a dissenting journalist in many ways, and you'll find with me and at Nuganomics and here at Nuga Radio arguments and proofs, if you will, of stories that you're not going to find elsewhere. And joining me in one area of coverage is Dr. J. Marvin Herndon. He is a nuclear geophysicist in San Diego. And as I was working on the sky striping story in our area, that is to say chemtrailing, that's the popular name for it, though I don't use that vocabulary. In covering sky striping over Hamilton County, I came across his work. And about 3 years ago, he made an important advance in that story about the military and the federal government's intervention in the weather. That's what is happening with a fallout that he is accounting for in his research. Dr. Herndon, your main discovery, if I could just take you back just a little bit to what you first discovered, is what? What is the content that these jets are pouring out over the skies all across the country and really over many countries worldwide?
Okay, let me explain it in a special kind of way. Imagine that what they were spraying was ground up tea leaves. Okay, when it rained, what would happen? The water would extract chemicals and flavors from the tea leaves, and the rain that came down would taste like tea. Well, this is an analogy to what is happening. They're spraying some substance, and the water in the atmosphere extracts chemicals from that. Now, going back at least to 2002 and maybe even a little further, concerned citizens would sample the rainwater after the spraying and had it analyzed. But usually they'd only request one element to be analyzed, aluminum. Sometimes two, aluminum and barium. And sometimes, but rarely, three, aluminum, barium, and strontium. So there was a widespread belief among the activists that these are the three metals that are being sprayed. Well, they're not metals that are being sprayed. They're elements that have been extracted from the coal fly ash into water. And they're soluble in the water. And there are a lot of other elements. Well, the first paper I did, I took data for those three elements and showed that they are extracted from coal. I used laboratory measurements of extractions of the elements from coal fly ash in water, and showed that they're very similar, that this is like a fingerprint, that those elements have the same relative amount extracted into rainwater as you would find if you did the experiment in the laboratory. And I published that in Current Science, which is a journal published by the Indian Academy of Sciences. And that was the first paper in the peer-reviewed literature to be published. Now, very soon after that was published, the editor was attacked with a massive a letter with all sorts of demeaning and false statements, demanding that the paper be retracted. Well, the editor was an honest person, and he sent me the comments and asked me to respond in writing, which I did. And he was going to publish the comments and my response, but the person who made the complaint would not allow it to be published, his complaints to be published. Well, this person has made several appearances subsequently. He was involved in 2 actions against editors and journals that published and reviewed and published 2 public health papers on the subject. Only he this time didn't do it alone. He got colleagues to join in, and so threatened the journal or coerced them or intimidated them that these 2 journals retracted peer-reviewed and published papers warning of the public health effects.
By you, is that right, Dr. Herndon? By you?
Yeah. By me, yes. Those were by me. And those articles. And this is no coincidence. This is a deliberate attempt to deceive the public as to the health effects of what is being sprayed. And you know I was on the right track, or these people wouldn't have even bothered with me. And subsequently, my Wikipedia page has been marginalized and falsified, and there are websites that smear my work. But this is an institutional problem. Now, where does this come from? That you have to answer the question. 50 years ago, a very well-connected scientist who was one who advised presidents about military matters, authored a chapter in a book called Unless Peace Comes. His chapter was called
How to Wreck the Environment.
How to destroy the environment. How to wreck the environment. Well, 50 years later, my colleagues and I reviewed that paper, that chapter. We reviewed it in the context of the advances of the science that's been done since that time, and in the actual deployment of those things. And I mean, McDonnell laid it out what the military could do to alter the Earth's environment, including causing earthquakes, tsunamis, weather modification. Now, he believed that you could cause floods by seeding clouds with silver iodide, making it rain. But he also talked about causing droughts. And he thought that could be caused by seeding clouds before the clouds reach the enemy country. So the rain, they'd already have lost their rain. What he didn't anticipate was that the military would develop the technology for preventing the fall of rain. This is what they're doing with the spraying. This is what they've been doing virtually every day for the past 5 years in California. It's why we have an artificial drought. That's why the fires in California, it's like a tinderbox. Everything is dry. They're preventing the fall of rain. And when the news would come out that, well, we're expecting rain in 2 days, pretty soon you'd see more of the trails in the sky, because they would try to prevent that from happening. The one point to be made about McDonald is that he saw this as the control of the environment, the weaponizing of the environment. He saw this as a way that one country could use those techniques against an enemy country. But what happened instead over the 50 years is that there has arisen a global movement, including the United Nations, including the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Control, that are setting up a false story. The false story is that carbon dioxide is producing global warming, and so we need to control the economy, the carbon economy, tax carbon. It's a mechanism for redistributing wealth, but it's also the basis of the biggest fraud, science-based fraud ever perpetrated. The IPCC and all of its models, it totally ignores what's happening by jets deliberately spraying in the atmosphere, which of course means that their models have no validity. But what is happening is it's causing global warming and causing climate chaos that then the proponents of the scam will blame on fossil fuel, on burning carbon dioxide. And so we need to have more control. And there's a big element involved wanting to allow civilians to engage in the spraying in the atmosphere, which the more you spray, the more the planet will heat, the more chaos it'll become, and the more it can be blamed on fossil fuel use. This is the biggest scam going, and so far our Congress people have not realized this. They're being duped.
So, in other words, Dr. Herndon, bad news in the way of floods or droughts or fires now where there are drought conditions, these really are good news, right? In a way, we can say bad news is converted to a good purpose. Crises don't go to waste with the government, and so here we have more reason to have further regulation, further sending us further back in time, as it were, not advancing our culture and our economy.
Oh, this is a terrible thing, and it's if the liberal faction would have their way, they would quit burning coal, which would keep us in the dark and cold in the winter. Because people just don't have they get these political agendas, and it's not a well-reasoned, and the scientific community is in the tank. They will tell you how in the future we may need to have geoengineering to offset the heating effect of fossil fuel use, the greenhouse effect.
Well, there's a story, Dr. Herndon. There's a story about the Harvard physicist saying we're going to have this one test. We don't know anything about laying particulate matter in the sky by jets. So we're going to have a test of dropping a few pounds of particles over Arizona from a balloon. And these stories are treated respectfully and seriously in some of the quasi scientific literature, like the Harvard magazine, where I read that one. And in a way, these people know what's happening, and yet they're pretending that we have to research whether or not we might actually have to consider dumping some kind of powder in the air.
This is the biggest lie. And I'll tell you, this goes all the way up. The president of the National Academy of Sciences has been involved in just this kind of lie, not telling the full truth about what's going on. In fact, I document that in a paper with a real long name that you'll find in my list of publications.
Right, and that's at nuclearplanet.com, and we're talking with Dr. Marvin Herndon, a nuclear geophysicist, and his website is very 1980s looking, Dr. Herndon, nuclearplanet.com, but you'll find there his papers, including ones that have been retracted, but you can still read them with the retracted in 40% gray type or 30% gray type over the front of them after they were yanked by the editors after complaints from important people, evidently. Well, Dr. Herndon,
complaints from disinformation professionals.
Yes. Well, let me ask about the listener thinking, wow, is this really happening here? Well, the listener who has eyes and looks up knows that it is. Is there anything that to get practical, kind of the consumer question here? Is there anything practical that the listener can do to prevent the effects? Is there are there supplements that one can take maybe every quarter, or what is there any practical thing that you can do?
Well, I wish there were, but there's really not. The problem is some of this material is so fine grained that it can enter your body. It will get into the air in your house. I mean, it's in principle you could have a really expensive filtration system that some people with that have allergies get, but that's not a very practical solution for most people. There's no supplements you can take. The best thing you can do is to let your friends know what's happening, and let your congressmen and senators know what's happening, and speak up. Don't be shy. That's the way this crime only can occur in an environment where people are afraid to speak up. I mean, this is what happened in Nazi Germany. The people were initially afraid to speak up, and after a time, the controls got so tough that there was no way they could speak up without being shipped off to a concentration camp. You need to speak up. Talk to your neighbors. Talk to your schools. These people should be looking up and wondering, what is this? The lie they'll tell you is, oh, well, these are just jet contrails, ice crystals from jet exhaust. It's nonsense. That's not the case, because modern jet engines don't produce much moisture. And the contrails are very rare because they require a lot of moisture in the exhaust, and it requires a very cold and very humid environment. These are particles, and you see them because you can tell they're particles because the way they spread out and the way they affect the light coming through the atmosphere, like a white haze sky.
I posted on our Facebook page for our listener who is just joining us. I've covered this story for about 4 years now, and Dr. Herndon is one of my sources. But we had 3 suns over Chattanooga, and that was on a heavy sky striping day, and the refraction of the sun into those rays created just an amazing effect. And those are not things that I would say occur in nature. So I drew a connection. I thought a reasonable connection between this visual phenomenon and the fact that we were being served by jets under federal contract or actual military tanker planes with this particulate matter over Hamilton County. So I'm trying to get my listener to look up into the sky and use his sense of inquiry. What is this about, Dr. Herndon?
Yeah, that is the thing. You look up in the sky and you bring it up to your congressmen and your senators. Why are they doing this? This is pollution. It is no doubt. It is pollution.
Well, it's pollution for a purpose.
Is harmful.
It's pollution for a purpose, and there's a public policy purpose. And I really don't want to ask you to speculate, Dr. Herndon. You are a scientist, and you try to look at facts and figures and physical things that are provable and have theses that are provable by observation. So
I can answer your question. The militaries of the different countries have been co-opted by some secret international agreement, and it has to be a secret international agreement for everybody to get on board. You'll see the spraying in Egypt, you'll see it in India, bad in London, see it in Canada, you'll see it in Switzerland, Australia. This is an international agreement. It's an international scam. And I imagine it's driven largely by the United Nations. And the militaries, of course, they love the idea of doing research into something that could be used as a weapon of war. So they're happy with it. But remember, the military back in the 50s and 60s and early 70s, they had the idea that the future of warfare was nuclear warfare. And they detonated more than 100 nuclear devices, call them bombs if you like, in the atmosphere, over Nevada in the U.S., and the fallout, the radioactive fallout, went across the country and even as far into as Europe. And moreover, they didn't tell the truth about it. Further, they did horrible experiments. They injected newborn babies, some only a week old, with radioactive iodine. They deceived pregnant women into taking vitamins that were really radioactive iron. And they did other things like take patients without informed consent.
Well, this is David Lewis. We're talking with Dr. Marvin Herndon. Dr. Herndon, thank you so much for joining us. We have just a second left. Thank you so much, Dr. Herndon.
Well, it's always a pleasure.
He is in San Francisco. He is in San Diego, and we have some important messages. Thank you.
3, 2, 1.
Chattanooga Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD4. 92.7 FM's news now.
A fire broke out at a home on Orchard Knob Avenue. Firefighters rushed into the scene, got the situation under control. However, 4 firefighters were treated for heat exhaustion by Hamilton County EMS. The damage to the home estimated at $20,000.